Good morning, guys. Just letting the tractor warm up here, so I thought I'd give you a bit of a walk around here of the rig I'm running. This is a versatile Delta Track 610. It's a 610 horse quad track. It's a 2018. We got this a couple years ago. Pulling a 50-foot 1890 John Deere single disc drill with a 550 bushel, just about trip back there, 550 bushel 1910 air tank. It's got the three different tanks. It's 200 bushel, 150 bushel, and 200 bushel in the rear. It's got sectional control, which I will get into. I won't do a review on this just yet because I am a little irritated with a few different things, both on the tractor and on the drill and on the cart. So I might wait until after seeding is done before I really unnecessarily go off on this thing. I'll let my frustrations kind of subside before I really talk about this. But yeah, this is pretty much it. We're hoping to get some wheat seeding done. We've got about 800 acres in. I really haven't done much filming because it's been really choppy. We haven't been able to get a whole lot done lately. I just got this field seeded yesterday, but it's really wet. It's finally warming up here, but we still have a really high water table. I almost got stuck yesterday. So we're just kind of picking away at small fields here and there, hoping today will be a good day. And after this, I think we've got enough ground drying up that we may actually be able to go pretty much full tilt. But for the moment, it's just kind of been the odd little field here and there. So I haven't done a whole lot of filming yet, but I guess I can quickly go through this drill. So we put these gauge wheels on last year. We had some of the originals were starting to wear out and actually had a couple of them fall off. So we took all them off and we put the spoke gauge wheel in here. The big advantage here is that you can't get mud built up. If you can see right through here, there is a gap to the backside of the disc. And what would happen on the other ones is if you turn on a sharp corner or whatever, it'll drag one corner of the drill. And especially on sticky clays or something, it'll actually push its way into your gauge wheel in between the disc. And right down here where there's not much for clearance down here, it would actually plug up and jam these up. And it was not a lot of fun to get a screwdriver in here and trying to clean that all out. So these are awesome. Also super easy to work on, and they're actually built a lot, certainly built a lot heavier. The other ones are all just plastic inside here on the bushing, and that's actually what ended up happening is it just spun and they got loose and literally just fell off because it was just plastic. That's all it was. So this is actually metal casting. So this is solid. They're heavy duty wheels. We've been really happy with them since we put them on. So how the single disc works on the John Deere is you've got all your openers are all on these framings here, and then you've got a cylinder that raises them up and down, and then they each have their own spring for their independent. So these are an independent opener, and what that means is that each opener has the opener and closer attached to it, so that each will follow the train independently. The old style drills were basically just a fixed frame, and you had all your packers. You'd have you'd have shanks or whatever up front, and then you'd have packers at the rear. And issues with that is if you went over hills or steep ditches or something like that, the shanks didn't always follow at the same depth because it was over the entire length of the frame, as far as also width-wise as well. And then your packers, because there was such a separation, you might have an opener, almost 10 feet in front of where your closing wheel was. So there could be discrepancies in depth that way. So this is what you call an independent when they're all their own separate unit. They're definitely a lot more maintenance and such this way, but they get a much better job done of seeding just because they're able to maintain seed depth so much better. So with these John Deeres, this is my depth setting here, and that just simply raises and lowers my depth gauge wheel, and that's all this does. This is my depth gauge wheel. It keeps my disc at a set height, and so all I have to do is turn this knob, move it up or down, get it back in spot. So that's where it's sitting. This is something I don't really like. This is the down pressure on my closing wheel, but anyways, I'll get into that later. So here is your disc. Not sure, hopefully you can see it all right. Here's your single disc. So it's running at a bit of an angle. Not sure if you can see it. It's only about 7 degrees or so. And this cuts a trench open. There, you can kind of see the angle of the disc there. I'm looking at it about straight on. So the disc runs at a bit of an angle and cuts your furrow or your seed trench. And then you've got right here is your seed boot. So your seed boot comes down here. There's an opening right there. Your seed comes out of. And then you've got your in-furrow firming wheel. So this runs in the furrow. So as soon as the seeds come out of the tube, this thing runs right down. And this is supposed to make sure the seeds sit right in the very bottom of the furrow, because that's obviously our lowest point and where depth is set. And all moisture should be is at the very bottom of said furrow. So that's what we want. That's what this thing does. And then this closing wheel, as you can see, runs on an angle counter to that of the wheel, and basically is supposed to move everything that this wheel, the closing wheel, everything that the opener, good morning Kyle, everything the opener moves over, this is basically supposed to move back. It works in ideal conditions. In the clay, sticky clays, not so much. There just isn't enough down pressure on these. Most closing wheels will run right over top of the furrow and put packing pressure and really pack that furrow down, whereas this one just kind of drags stuff off the surface and throws a little dirt in the trench. So that is something I will go into later. We'll see in the field I'm going to today. I'll get out and do some depth checks and probably show you where it is leaving the furrow open and why that's such an issue. But for now, I'm gonna hit the road. I've got a 15-kilometer move ahead of me to the next quarter, so I will catch up with you guys later. Okay, so we just got to the field. I just set up my 2630 display, so I've changed the field. Basically everything was already set though, because this is still on wheat. And then on the field view, I've already got the field entered. Still on wheat again, so everything's set up there. Now we will go out and do the quick portal routine. Check seed runs. Okay, so we're over by the tank here. So what we're gonna do is just make sure all our seed runs are running or working, putting out seed. So you see that meter there is turning. That's my wheat seed. And at the back is my fertilizer, my starter phosphorus. So now I just wanna go back here, make sure all my runs are turning and putting out seed. There's no hoses have come off. So I'm looking for it. You can see the seed underneath every one. So I'm gonna check that. And then there's also a front row. Same thing, just each time move across. And the problem that can happen when you fold and unfold is right here with these hoses. So these are my blockage monitors. So I have individual run blockage on every single hose here, on every single run. So what happens if I have a blockage, let's say down here in the seed boot, something gets plugged, the seed is gonna back up this hose and then set off this sensor. When the sensor no longer sees any movement, it will set off an alarm. When it knows that there's supposed to be seed product going by, if this is plugged up, it'll set off an alarm saying that this run is plugged, and then I can get out and come check. Problem is, you have a hose coming from the distributor or the tower to here with a clamp, and then you have the blockage, and then you have another clamp on this bottom hose. And problem is, there's no barbs or hooks or anything in here to really keep these in place, like you would with you know, a water line or something like that. There's always a barbed end. All this is simply friction with these clamps. And what can happen is these hoses, when they're new and they're rubber, when they're new, I mean, these are just a plastic hose, but they're a little flexible, so you squeeze down on them, they'll really clamp good. When they get old, man, I'm having trouble with my English today. When they get old, they get firm, they get a little hard, a little bit brittle, and they'll actually take the shape of said clamp. So then the clamps no longer squeeze down good on them. And so then when you fold and unfold, quite often you'll have hoses pop out. But anyways, you get the idea. I'm gonna check the rest of the drill and then get seeding. Hey guys, so I'll show you what I was talking about earlier where I don't like the John Deere closing system. So what we're looking at here is the seed furrows or seed trench. And so these are all, guess I should have the camera pointed. These are all your different runs, or all your different furrows. So this is what it should look like. So when you see it like this, where you basically can't see anything, like this is good. That shadow kind of makes it hard to see. But Like, that's what you want to see, where you basically can't see anything. And idea of that is the seed has been dug down in here. Gonna open this up a little bit. Oh, had a wheat seed. There's some wheat. See those guys right there? So that is, we're about an inch and a quarter for a depth. Some of them happen, I want to be a little deeper than that, but that's still okay. So that is where the seed sits, and then you throw this dirt over top of the seed so that you get good seed to soil contact, as well as you don't allow it to dry out. We want to keep moisture in the soil so that these seeds are able to germinate just on the moisture that's in the soil, and they are not dependent upon a rain to germinate. Problem is, as you can see with this one, how it's sitting wide open like this. See those seeds? So this furrow never got closed at all. So you can see here where it did, the wheel closed here, and then it rode up. You can actually see, if I come to this side, you can actually see where the seed closer ran along this edge. It rode up here, and then it actually sat up on top, and back down here when it found some loose dirt was able to close again. And that is an issue for us, because these seeds are not going to germinate sitting the way they are. They're going to have to get a big long rain, long enough that they can hit their required moisture. I think it's 30% moisture, whatever they germinate at, 30 or 50 or 60. Anyway, somebody might have to correct me on that, but they will hit a certain moisture and then they will germinate and send a sprout down. They are sitting in the bottom of the trench, which is good. Once the sprout shows up, once the sprout hits, the roots will go down into the soil and that plant should survive. But the problem is we need a rain on this in order for it to germinate. Instead of having proper row closure like this would trap in that soil moisture, and those seeds should germinate sitting there like a lot of these other rows should, hopefully. Hey guys, back again. We just loaded up with seed. We've, on the last of the wheat, we changed to a new variety. We went from Brandon to Viewfield. So I'm gonna do a calibration just to make sure my rates are on. So I'll show you how that works. So I've already done a little bit back there, and I'll explain when I get back to the tank, but 2630 screen, it's pretty simple. I'm gonna go to my air cart. I'm going to go here. I'm gonna go cal. I'm gonna select the tanks that I want to calibrate. I'm gonna go down to here, and here it tells you, make sure you turn the meter 2 revs, and just to make sure you prime the seed runs. And so I've actually purged some seed through. That way all the cups I know are full, and as soon as they start turning, I'll have seed out, so it should give me an accurate reading. I've already done that though, so I'm gonna skip that page. And then all I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go back to the air tank. I'm gonna turn on the runs. I'm gonna hold down, and they are gonna automatically shut off on their predetermined weight, and then I'm gonna enter in what the actual weight is, and it'll calculate the difference. Okay, so coming up to the air drill, like I said before, I've already cheated on some of this and got this set up. So these are the bags. These bags come right in here, kind of tucked in, fold up nice. So I've got them on tank 1, tank 2. Those are where my wheat seed is. You can see where I purged a little bit of wheat seed. I'm not too worried about that little bit extra. And I also have my little scale here. So I've already got it set for the bag. So the bag weight is 0.97 pounds. So with these things hooked up, I can show you on the back tank. So these drop out, and then there's little hooks right here on both sides, front and rear, that these bags, see them over there. The bags clip onto that, and then they just get pulled tight here with the strap. So I'm gonna come over to here and turn my meters on, and I'm gonna hold this on until the meters stop turning. They're gonna turn to what they believe is a preset weight, and then I'll let it enter in what the actual weight is, and it will calculate the differences. So you can see the meters are turning, and this meter on the front is bigger than the rear, so this one should stop turning before the rear does. It stopped, and the rear is still going. Okay, so it's done. I've just dropped that bag off. Go around to this bag, undo that, drop that down, and that's it. It's that simple. So now I'm just gonna pick the bags up, put them on the scale. see what the scale says. I'm gonna enter it into my phone so I make sure that I remember the numbers, and I'm gonna run up to the cab and enter them in, and then we should be calibrated. Okay, so we've got the bags weighed up, calibrated. I haven't went into the cab yet. I will show you that as well, but I just wanted to show you how the auger goes away. Well, technically conveyor. So I was lazy. I left this out. Normally we'd carry the bags up into the bins, but I figured, you know what? It's just me here by myself. I was just gonna dump the bags right in here. So this is the conveyor. As you can see, there's little paddles. Maybe it's better from here. You can see the paddles on the conveyor. And so those grab the crop and bring them up and dump them into the tanks. And this one is actually all on hydraulics. So I should hopefully be able to do this by myself. Maybe, we'll see. We've had this drill long enough. I should be good at this by now. So there's just this little keypad with all the different buttons and things that I need. For the most part, it is fairly simple as long as it works. We have had some issues with this, and I will show you the little controller. I think year 3, this drill we got as a demo in 2016. I think it had like 1,200 acres on it. And in year 3, the, I guess you call it electronic control module here, that is the brains behind this thing, quit on us. And I think that was a $2,700 touch. And the worst part is they don't even have a manual override where you can just do this manually in case this fails. If that fails, this auger does not move. So that was fun. We had to drag a conveyor around until we could get parts for this thing. Said they'd never seen it happen until the tech came out, and I think he'd already done like 4 that year. So that was an issue with these things. I don't know if it still is, but that is all there is to racking this up. There's just one in here, and then there's that lever right there that will clip up, and then this thing's locked and loaded, and we're back in the cab. Okay, so we're back in the cab. I have entered in the 2 different weights that came up, and all I gotta do is hit this button. It generates its number. It had a previously generated number. It's got one now off of this, and that's it for the calibration. And we are ready to go. This is the office in the Versatile. Got some buttons here. I mean, this park brake, PTO, cruise control and stuff is here. Throttle's here. Your power shift here. Got a few things on the display here, but basically everything shows up on my screen. I mean, I've got my hydraulics. I can get all my different tractor information in here. I usually like having my hydraulic screen open so that I can change my fan speed and whatnot on the fly. And this is the Field View program. I'm sure you've seen it on a few other of the YouTubers that are running this. It's a really great program. It maps my seeding, my spraying, my harvesting, and so it layers it all. So if I want to change populations, if I want to change varieties, which we're actually going to do right now in this field, it will map all of that, and it will actually give me how many acres I've done and kind of keep those separated, so that when I spray over it and harvest over it especially, it will actually separate those acres out because it knows exactly where I started and where I stopped with the new varieties. So when I harvest over top of this map, well, I harvest this field and it'll come up. I can do a season summary, so I can do a planting summary right now, and it'll come up with how many acres I've done. Right now I've only done the 1 variety. You can see there's the 1 variety, how many acres I've done already, and now when I come up with the next variety, it'll show how many acres I've done of that one. And then when I harvest it, I can do harvest summary, and it'll show up with the yields of 2 varieties, and it's instant, which I really love. Normally you can get the same information off of this screen. However, usually you have to get a USB, export it onto your computer, and it's a bit of a process. This is automatic, and all this is a Bluetooth program, and so really it runs off the diagnostic port of your tractor, and it simply intercepts the messages in the ISOBUS system, which is kind of your electronic controller that basically controls all of this drill. Is your ISOBUS. ISOBUS is kind of standard across the industry, so it plugs into your tractor diagnostics. It intercepts the ISOBUS, which all the information heading to this screen, it intercepts and displays it immediately on this screen. So yes, it is possible to get on here, but it's nice, and because I can get it instant, whereas this is a little bit delayed. Not to mention, this doesn't see colors, so if we had multiple different colors of tractors, of combines and whatnot, this is all one platform, as opposed to having multiple different units and having to have multiple different softwares on your computer in order to upload, and then it can be a bit of a mess. This really makes things simple, and I love using it so far. Remember back in my first video when I said we had a bit of a rough fall around here with the early snow and whatnot? Well, I'm not sure how well you're gonna be able to see it, but that is the neighbor over there with 2 combines harvesting the crop that's still out from last year. It has been a rough go in this area. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. I got interrupted and totally lost my train of thought. So, we were switching to canola. Tomorrow probably do like a couple hundred acres there, and then switch again to beans. Mostly logistics issue, try and get the this side cleaned up. So basically what we have is 3 farms. So where my mom grew up, where my dad grew up, and then where my aunt's dad used to farm. So we're cleaning up the area where my dad grew up. So we're gonna finish off. We have a few acres there to clean up, and then we'll move back home to the main farm, which is where my mom grew up, and we'll do some stuff there. Still going okay here. We got a lot of dust, but it is really soft in this field yet. So what's happening is last fall we had a record amount of rainfall in September. We had 3 feet of snow in the second week of October. So the ground here is extremely saturated, and so water table's full. The field is really, literally if you walk on it, it's just a sponge. So we got a harrow across this a couple days ago. It's dried out enough on the surface that I can run on top of it, and still doing an okay job, but definitely leaving some ruts. The other issue we're having in here so far is frost boils. So for those of you that don't know about the frost and kind of what can happen there, it seems definitely in the higher moisture climates, when you have moisture right near the surface that freeze up, the frost and the ice seems to be able to work its way down into the ground a lot easier. And what happened when we had so much moisture last fall, the frost seems to have went in really deep this year, especially with our cooler temperatures. It's taken a long time for that frost to come out of the ground. And the problem that arises from that is when that frost is thawing and starts to come out, water normally will soak down into the soil, but the problem with frost is that there is ice underneath it, so it can't go down, so its only option is to come back up to the surface. And that can cause issues in 2 ways. One, you can have areas that are what we call sweating. So that's just, it leaves the ground dark. It doesn't really pool up with water or anything like that, but it does make the ground soft, and that's what a lot of this is. A lot of the hills and stuff are much softer than the hollows and the flat spots. Like right now in the spot I'm in here, it's pretty good. Drill really isn't going down very much. This is a kind of a higher side of the field, a flat spot, so there really isn't much for issues here. I'll show farther up, if we get closer down to this other end, it'll get real squishy again, and that is frost coming out. And that's again just, it's sweating, so it's not, you can still travel over top of it. It's not quicksand. It's doesn't provide too many issues. The other thing that can happen with frost is you get a frost spoil, and frost spoil is essentially quicksand, and if you drive into that, it has no bottom. So that, I'm not sure what the difference is or what causes the differences, but anyways, frost spoils are really dangerous in terms of when you're driving. And I guess basically you dive down, if you drive into them, you go down until you hit ice. So if you have frost just 6 inches below the ground, you're only gonna go 6 inches down, not that big a deal. But what happens if you have frost that's 3 feet down, and all on top of that is just muck? You drive into that and you drop through the bottom. So now you're in a 3-foot hole. And it's very hard to predict, because usually the frost goes in where there isn't good snow cover. So normally your wet spots, as you would think, are your low spots or your depressions or your hollows. But with frost, it's actually the ridges, because the ridges and the high points are the areas that don't get a lot of snow cover, and the frost is able to go down really deep. So you could be working in the bottom of a slough and have dust and be dry and be great, and start climbing back up that slough and reach the top of that hill and just disappear. So that always makes things fun. Thankfully in this area, generally we run some kind of a seedbed prep in front of me. That's what these tracks are here. We have that Summers Octa-Harrow that I showed in the previous video. It is running over top of this, incorporating fertilizer in, and so the harrow is usually able to find those. It's not nearly as heavy as this unit is that I'm pulling, so it can run over top of that stuff in in situations that I can. And if there are frost boils or stuff, usually he can find them and get through them better than I could. So usually they are marked out before I ever get into a field, which obviously helps. But yeah, you still gotta watch out for that for sure. And sometimes you you gotta try them out just to see. You know, sometimes they look pretty dry and you think you can make it, and it turns out that you can't. So you gotta be careful that way. But yeah, for the most part, this field has been a bit of a struggle. You can kind of see the ruts that the harrow left. And when the harrow's leaving ruts, it's soft. And you can see, hopefully you can see, these tires are starting to squish down. The camera really doesn't show it that well, but it's not wet. I'm not picking up a lot. That tire is there just because it's running in the tractor track. But I've got about a ½ inch of dry dirt on the soil surface, and there you can see the ruts from my last pass. So when you see ruts like that from the tank, that is frost. Like, that is really soft because the tank is almost empty and still leaving ruts. So I am literally just running on top of this. And so this is different. This whole field, like, we had a difficult time trying to find a spot to even load the drill here because this whole field is a sponge, which is not very common. You don't see that very often. Usually it's just the odd spot or two. Again, with moisture, and if you have a heavier soil that'll hold on to the moisture a little bit worse, it might have some it might have frost go down deeper than most areas and will still be seeping later on, like now. But I guess just last year, given everything that went on with the really wet year that we had a lot of frost drive down deep, and it just will not dry up. And that's part of our problem right now, is that we do not have enough dry ground. We've been struggling to find ground to run on, and again, it's super dusty. You think, oh well, like, how can it be so wet when it's so dusty? Well, that is the problem. We have frost underneath the ground, and it's just making it difficult for things. And again, I said, it can be dangerous because if you hit a spoil, you can disappear in a hurry. So that's kind of an update on what we've been dealing with. I think now we're supposed to get some really good heat. We're supposed to be into the kind of mid to high 20s almost all week. Really warm overnight, so that's really going to bring frost out, which is both a good thing and a bad thing. I mean, we need the frost to get out of here, then the ground can firm up and we can run across it great. But at the same time, we don't want that frost, or if that frost all wants to come out at once, then things get really wet, and then you can get into those kind of frost spoils. So at the moment it's coming out slow, and it has been coming out slow, and it's kind of slow enough that we're able to muck across it and still get some stuff in. So yeah, we're going to kind of see what the weather does here, but hopefully the frost comes out soon, and we're able to kind of have a smooth finish here to seeding. But we're gonna kind of go on a field by field basis. I know Dad was running around today trying to find ground and had a really difficult time. I shouldn't say difficult time, definitely found some ground that we can do. And but he did come across a few fields that are still sweating pretty bad. So we're I wouldn't call us full tilt seeding at this point, even though we are almost done wheat. We've got, after this field, I've got about 10 more acres here. And after this field, we will have about 1,100 acres of wheat in. And we have about 1,300 total this year. We've got another 200 acres. Again, that's the field that'll be going to later on where the canola is. That's also where this, the fields he was running around checking that had a lot of frost in them. That is what we're really waiting on. So we're switching over. We're going to do a little canola, switching over to beans because we got some bean ground that's ready. And we're just going to keep flip-flopping. Where the guys have run ahead of me a bit and are opening up ground. They have fertilized the quinoa ground, so that'll be something interesting. So we've got that harrowed, and we're hoping to get a good wheat germination on that, as there really aren't any herbicide options for us to use in crop. So we're hoping for a good germination there. Wheat germination, we'll get that, get a good burn down before we seed it, and then that way hopefully the quinoa can come up without any competition. And yeah, that's going to be really cool. Never grown quinoa before. That's a first for us. The lupins, we're growing 3 new crops that we've never grown before on the farm. So these are going to be, it's going to be interesting, going to be exciting to see. We've got 7 different crops we are doing production acres on this year. So we're a little busier than normal. Normally we just run a 4-crop rotation. So you guys will get to see a few new things, just as I will. And yeah, the other new thing we're growing is dry beans, which we are familiar with, but we're growing a different type of dry bean called blacks. And they're called blacks just because the seed is literally black. They really got creative with that name. So we've grown pintos, we've grown navies, which are different types of dry beans. We've never grown these blacks before. It's a bit of a different market. We thought we'd try it out. They had a lot more seed available in the fall last year, or in the winter actually, when we were trying to decide what we were going to do. So we decided we'd try this, and we're hoping that the market is a little bit smaller on these things and that they won't get flooded. With some of the low prices on soybeans and canola and such, we're thinking that a lot of acres are going to go into dry beans, into your regular pintos and whatnot. So we're hoping that if that market does get a little bit flooded, that the black market will still stay up and still be a decent price. So we'll try that and see what happens. And yeah, those though we don't seed until later on, so we will do those last. We'll probably do we'll do the canola, a little bit of canola tomorrow, we'll do the beans, then we'll finish off the canola, then we'll probably do the quinoa, and then we'll switch again and do the dry beans. So there's still a lot of seeding coming up, a lot of content coming up, and I do apologize for some of the videos. I should have started this channel before I got into seeding. So I haven't really figured out the editing side of much yet, so a lot of the videos you're getting are raw and they're uncut, and but I will be getting better at it. I will be working towards it. I want to get some really good content out to you guys. And yeah, I've got some GoPros ordered. I've actually got a drone now, so hopefully once this spring kind of gets settled down, I'm able to play with those a little bit. I need to get some different mounts and stuff ordered for the GoPro so I can get them here in the cab. You can get some different camera angles. I can get some better action shots and whatnot. But for now, I'm working with what I got, which is just my phone. So yeah, I think that'll be it for this video and for today. Yeah, I will see you guys tomorrow.